Good morning, I'm Alton Jones, and it's a great morning because we're here at O.H. Ivie Reservoir, which is arguably the big bass capital of the universe. You know, Ivie has kicked out more bass over 13 pounds than, for sure, any lake in the country. If you want to have the chance at a bass of a lifetime, you come to O.H. Ivie. The lake's about 20,000 surface acres when it's full, and it's fed by the confluence of the Colorado and Concho rivers, both very fertile rivers that pour into here. What you get is a really diverse lake and habitat in here. You know, you'll have some dirtier water up in the river arms of the lake and big major flats with a lot of flooded brush in the central part of the lake. And then down by the dam, it's really a highland reservoir with ultra clear water and a lot of rock. There's an abundance of fish all over O.H. Ivie. Largemouth bass go all the way from the dam to the river, every place in between. You have a chance of catching a really big bass. But there's also smallmouth bass in here, and that's kind of a nice bonus. There's also meanmouth bass in here and spotted bass as well. So the cover and structure that you have in Ivie, one thing that I always like to do when I'm driving to a lake, I like to look at the surrounding terrain. And that's exactly what you have in Ivie, because every time the water draws down, all this brush that you see around me right now, it grows up on that lake bottom. And that's really the very special thing about Ivie is all the fresh flooded brush, the cycle that happens about every 10 or 15 years between the droughts and the floods. The other thing that you have a lot of man-made road beds. This road bed that I'm standing on right here, for example, it just goes straight out into the lake all the way across, and it's fishable. There's a number of those paved roadways, underwater bridges, man-made structures, there's old house foundations. You have a lot of deep, well-defined creek channels on Ivie as well, so the fish have great pathways. And then you have the great, vast, shallow flats and shallow tapering points that are covered in brush and just fish habitat galore. There's times when the water's low that you will see vast amounts of hydrilla and other types of vegetation kick in because you've got the fertile water coming in from those rivers. Anytime a lake can get labeled as the big bass superstar of Texas, you know something special is going on. I really credit the Parks and Wildlife, and specifically the Toyota ShareLunker program and the genetics research and breeding that they've done with making Ivie into the trophy bass fishery that it is. The very fertile nature of the water and the great genetics program that the Texas Parks and Wildlife has sparked here on O.H. Ivie, that's why you have all the giant bass swimming around. You know, O.H. Ivie's not on the way to anywhere. You have to kind of be coming here to get here. But there are some towns not too far away. The closest major town is Coleman, Texas, which sits about 30 minutes to the north, and you have Brownwood, which sits about an hour to the east. Both have ample hotels and some really good restaurants. Also out at the lake, you're going to find some vacation rentals, especially on the mid to lower part of the lake. So be sure and check your Airbnbs and VRBOs. There's three really good boat ramp access areas here on Ivie. Kennedy is down near the dam. You have Paget in the central part of the lake, and then you have Concho access, which is up in the rivers. So no matter what part of the lake you want to fish, you can launch in that part of the lake on a good deep water access paved boat ramp. My favorite is Paget just because it's closest to Coleman, which is my favorite little town close by. It's a good idea to check the water level at Ivie before you come, because we have about a 10-year cycle of high water and low water, and that's just based on rains. The higher the water, the more flooded brush there is. Almost every time I come, it seems like it's at least 15 feet low, but that's not a problem like it is at some lakes because there is such a vast amount of cover. You know, early spring around here starts in about the first part of February, and that's when the bass begin to transition away from their deep water spots that they've spent all winter in, and they're beginning to start moving shallow. They're not spawning yet, but they're moving that direction. And what that really means is I'm gonna start getting away from the main part of the lake, and I'm gonna start working my way up into the creeks and fingers of the lake. What I'm really looking for is transitions, and the way you're gonna find those is where your contour lines really tighten up. So two things. One, I want to find a big flat because I know they're probably gonna spawn. That water's really gonna warm up eventually. But right now the fish aren't quite to that stage. So I'm gonna look for places where I get some really tight contours like this and like that, yet they're really close to these big shallow flat areas. So this is where the fish are going, but these are good transitions where the fish can stage before they fully commit and really move into those spawning type areas. So these are what you call pre-spawn transition places. This is places where you'll get schools of bass stacking up and staging, waiting to move even shallower when we progress a little bit later in the spring. What I like to do as far as finding exactly which coves to fish on a particular day is I want to really check the wind. On a warm day, here's what happens. The warm, just maybe the top inch or two of water warms up the fastest, and then the wind will push that shallow layer and stack it up on the windy side of the lake. So here's the key. You want to get to the windy side of the lake and then get out of the wind on that windy side of the lake. You'll find that those coves sometimes will be maybe even as much as 10 degrees warmer than the coves on the leeward side of the lake. Okay, this is Elm Creek. So let's say you had a southwest wind blowing up in this direction. These fingers coming off to the side are going to be protected. They're on the windy side of the lake, but they're going to be protected from the wind, and these coves will be maybe as much as 10 degrees warmer than, say, a cove over here on the other side of the lake, on the lee side of the lake. Warmer water makes all the difference in the early spring. Prespawn, good choice on Ivie is an XPS swerve glide bait. And you know, when the big fish are up shallow in the water column, there's few things you can show a big fish that'll entice him more than a glide bait does. And it's got a very natural action to it. You know, you really just want to walk it slow glide stop, slow glide stop, slow glide stop, slow glide stop, just like that. And it's a good search bait too, because in the clean water, even if they don't bite it, you'll see them follow it. You'll know for sure if you're in a good area, but they won't hesitate to go ahead and choke on this thing too. It's a real good match for large bait fish, which, you know, a big fish is big usually because he's lazy. He wants to get as many calories as he can in one bite. Another good bait for the Prespawn is going to be Zoom winged fluke, fished on a jig head. That's an owner range roller jig head, and it's a 1/8, and this is on days when it's really cold during the Prespawn, because you can get some really, really cold weather this time of year. And but those fish will be suspended, and they'll be coming back into these pockets, but they'll be suspended out over the creek channels. It's really a forward-facing sonar technique. It's a hangover from winter. It's a good winter bait too, but just we're fishing it in different water. Essentially a very slow technique, but it's something, again, it's very natural to the fish. It looks as close to a real bait fish as just about anything you can throw. So when we move into the spawn on OH Ivie, you really want to start thinking about super protected water. And what that means is places where they don't have to worry about the wave action and the wind action disturbing the eggs. And to me, I really want to be starting to get in the shallow pockets as opposed to, you know, shallow water out on a point here. Not so much during the spawn. I would much rather be tucked back around here in some of these coves. I like to find coves. Look at this one here. It's got some deep water leading in, but then it's got shallow water going way back in it. And those shallow places are going to be just absolutely chock full of brush. And that's the cover that they're going to spawn around. They're going to get spawning right around the bases of the flooded trees, whether it's a mesquite tree or if it's a desert willow, whatever it is. The big ones love to spawn in places where it's hard for you to penetrate with the lure. And the places that the average guy won't cast. So spool you up some big braid, get you a big heavy hook, and know that you're probably going to get broken off a few times. But kind of my motto is, let's get him on first and let's worry how to get him out later. The bulk of the spawn here takes place in the month of April. The week before the full moon in April, you're guaranteed that most of the population is going to be shallow, and there's going to be a lot of bass that you can target up in the really shallow water. You know, one of the baits I'm most known for just happens to be one of my favorite baits for the spawn, and it's a Senko. And when I'm coming here to fish at Ivie, I'm gonna throw the 6-inch version. The most common is the 5, but the 6, I like a bigger profile bait here because honestly, I want a bigger profile fish. Normally in the spring, most people, myself included, will throw a Senko wacky, or we put an O-ring or something around it and fish it in the middle. At Ivie, I do not do that because, as you can see, the cover's just too thick when you get up where the fish need to be. And so I'm gonna Texas rig it. I've got it on a 3-aught hook. Sometimes I'll go up to a 4-aught hook if the fish are even bigger. And I'm using a 1/4 ounce, just a bullet weight on there, and I'm Texas rigging it because I'm gonna pitch it up in these pieces of cover, all these little desert willows and mesquite trees, and I really wanna work the bait down to the base of the tree. On days during the spawn when I just need to get a bite, when things are a little tougher than I expected, I go to my go-to bait, which is a tube. And this happens to be the Bass Pro Shops Magnum flipping tube. It works really, really well. The nice thing about a tube is it's really compact, and a lot of times when fishing's tough, it's because the fish have tucked back into thicker than normal cover. You'll see I've got a pretty heavy weight. That's a 1/2 ounce tungsten bullet weight on there. And the reason I do that is because I want to pick the thickest bush I can and pitch it right into the heart of it. So not a thin bush, but places where it's really shady and where most people aren't throwing, that's where I'm gonna put this tube. It's a good crawfish imitator. Make sure it's weedless. And make sure when you run your finger over it, you don't feel the point of the hook. That way you know that you can get it into the cover and get it back out. But it will surprise you during the spawn how big of a fish you can catch on this little bitty bait. Summertime is when the fish get perhaps the most predictable that they'll be all year long, because they're going to gang up on ambush spots, and typically the same holes will work over and over again almost every summer on any lake you go to, and the same is true on OH Ivie. The features that you're looking for are underwater points. During the summer, I'm starting to get away from these creeks where I fished in the spring, and I really want to be focusing my time on the main section of the lake. Whether it's down by the dam or in this midsection of the lake or even up the river, you want to stay out on the main body. Now specifically what I'm looking for is I'm looking for places where you have shallow tapering points like this one right here that taper off and then drop abruptly into deep water. Look at this right here. You actually have a creek channel, the main river channel right here, brushing right up against the end of that point. Look right here, you've got a nice little hump right here with the river channel going by it. You got the same scenario over here. And these are a fairly good distance offshore. Once you get out deeper than about 25 to 30 feet, you're not gonna have much brush, but the fish will get out there beyond the brush. Don't think you have to be up in the brush. You can catch them on the outside of the brush in the summer, but a lot of fish will get out even deeper beyond that. One thing that you do have in Ivie is you have, look at these road beds right here. Here's a road bed coming out off the shoreline, and it crosses a little ditch right here, and you're gonna have either a culvert pipe or a bridge right there. That's another key man-made feature that I love to fish on Ivie or places like that. And there's lots of underwater bridges on the lake. I'm always looking for specific targets out there, like an underwater rock pile. Maybe it's an old house foundation, maybe it is a bridge, but the fish will usually be holding on something very predictable. I'm using my electronics, so I'm gonna get in an area like this and I'm gonna side scan up and down it and find the most likely spot. Sometimes it's just where the deepest water cuts in closest. Other times it'll be maybe a little bit off to the side. The deepest water doesn't cut in closest here, but you know what? If there's a house foundation there or some sort of piece of rock, something man-made, that's gonna be a really good spot to try to fish in the summertime as well. If you move up more toward the river, you're gonna start finding the fish, even in the summer, a little bit shallower. My basic rule of thumb is the shallower I wanna fish, the further up the rivers I'm gonna go. Both rivers, this is the Concho, they are fishable for several miles up each river, but the further up you go, the shallower you're gonna find the fish. Out on the deeper part of the lake, the main part of the lake, the fish just have more deep water options. As you get up in the rivers, the deep water option's not really there. So if you're a power fisherman, no matter what the season is, you can go in the rivers and have some success, even in the summer. They call it a Texas rig for a reason, because we fish at a lot of seasons here in Texas, and one of my favorite summer baits is a Texas rigged creature bait. This is a regular sized brush hog. I've got it on a 3/4 ounce tungsten weight. And what I'm really going to target is some of these outside trees that we find on points and near the edges of creek channels, maybe even some isolated trees that are out on humps offshore. But any kind of, the piece of cover that's closest to the deepest water is what I want to find. And you know, it seems like most people now throw a Carolina rig and a free rig and all these different things because Texas rig is old school. Well, it's so old school that nobody's doing it anymore, which kind of makes it new school. So as you can see, as you get out deeper, the trees thin out a little bit, and I'm looking for these trees that are out closest to the deep water edge. And I'm just gonna throw it in there, and if one doesn't have it on the way down, shake it a couple times, pick it up, and pitch it into the next tree. Just get it as close as I can. The guy who pitches in the most trees wins. Another bait that I love to fish in the summer is a Berkley Chapo 75. Early in the morning or late in the evening, it can be good, you know, low light conditions no matter what. If you happen to get a day with some clouds or an afternoon thunderstorm, those shallow fish will fire up. It's good if they're schooling fish. That's one reason I've always got this bait tied on, because wherever I'm fishing, if I'm up flipping my brush hog in a tree, they may come up schooling 25 yards away on the other side of the boat. I can pick the Chapo up, throw it over there. Something that's a little bit different about the way I fish it, I don't mind getting in the summertime, even in the middle of the day, and getting up really, really shallow. Because one thing this lake has a lot of is panfish, bluegill, and they spawn all summer long. As long as the water temperature is 65 degrees or above, which is all summer long at OH Ivie, you will have bluegill spawning within a week of the full moon. Something that's really unique on OH Ivie and a few other lakes in West and South Texas is what we call the dragonfly pattern. It happens in August and September when it gets really hot and the bite gets really tough. You get back in these shallow pockets that have brush and vegetation that's in 1 to 3 feet of water. And if you watch, you'll actually see bass jumping 12, maybe even 18 inches out of the water and catching dragonflies in midair. It's a really unique thing to see, but the way you catch these fish is on a popper. You don't want to throw a shad color when you want a dark one, something that matches a dragonfly, a black or a green pumpkin, something like that. But look for places where you can get back in the brush. That's where the dragonflies are. That's where a lot of catchable fish are going to be. It's topwater heaven. In fact, during the MLF team series here, my son and his partner Ott Defoe ran into that dragonfly pattern and ended up winning their round.
That's not a little one either. Not a baby, huh?
Yes, sir. Let's go. This place out here looks good.
Yeah, this is about to be the best place we found today. Let's go, baby.
Nice job, Junior. There's lots of blue dragonflies in here.
We're on a blue dragonfly biting.
Yeah, very much.
So the fall feed on Ivie really starts about the 1st of October and will run all the way through November. And as the season progresses, the bite will pick up because the water is going to continue to cool. And this is the time of year I'm going to start getting off the main lake and working my way back toward the creeks. And I'm not so much looking for like a tiny main lake pocket like I was, you know, in late summer. I'm looking more like for an actual creek, and I want to fish the first, you know, maybe third of that creek as I'm going in. So let me zoom out a little bit. Here's Elm Creek. I'm gonna focus like on that part, on this creek. The first third is where I'm gonna be looking. You can catch fish this time of year in this area starting to come out on these creek channels, but you can also catch them still up in the flooded brush. I'm gonna target mainly the outside edge of the flooded brush as I get into these creeks. As you go up the river, look at this little place right here. We've got a really nice bend right here on the outside. That would be a great spot in the fall, but it's also right at the mouth where this little creek comes in. So this to me would be a textbook fall spot. But again, so let's look at the size of that creek right there. I'm gonna fish about the first third of it. But any of these, again, channel swing baits, kind of like what we had in the early spring, these channel transitions can be really good in the fall as well. One thing I will tell you about in the fall, a lot of times you'll find what I call the magic stretch. This is the time of year when you may find a 100-yard stretch that's absolutely loaded with fish. You might find 20 miles with nothing, but when you find that 100-yard stretch, you'll know it and it'll be really good. So you can power fish, you can cover a lot of water until you find it. In the clear water here on Ivie, when you get around them, the bass will show themselves. So in the fall, your October, November time frame, the fish here really get keyed on shad, and it's a great time to fish a jerkbait. Fish are gonna stay keyed on shad all the way through winter, but in the fall is when the bait is really up high in the water column, a lot of times within 5 to 10 feet of the surface. And so in this clear water, you can target them real easily with this bait. Getting a really fast cadence with this bait is really important. A lot of times a single fish won't react to a jerkbait, but if there's 2 or 3 together, there's competition going on, and one of them says, I've got to get it before my buddies get it. And that's one of the beautiful things about a jerkbait. In the fall, I've always got a drop shot tied on, and this is my favorite drop shot worm. It's a robo worm, 6-inch fat. This color is called Margarita Mutilator, but I fish a lot of different colors of this 6-inch fat robo worm. I've got it on a 3/8 ounce weight that allows me to get it deep, but I'm fine throwing that 3/8 ounce weight in 5 feet of water as well as 30 feet of water. When conditions get really tough, you get a sunny, calm day with no wind at all, you can still catch fish on the drop shot. If it's raining and blowing 30 miles an hour, you can still catch fish on a drop shot. Wintertime. It starts in December on Ivie, and it's really going to run through about, through the end of January, so December and January. Those are the months, if you just say, I want to catch the biggest bass of my life, you're going to want to come to Ivie in either December or January. There's no such thing as too cold here for that when you're looking for that one bite. It may be too cold for you, but it's not too cold for a 15-pounder to bite whatever's on the end of your line. And I'm not going to be like way back in a creek like this. I'm going to be more like sort of on the main lake or even the mouth of a creek, but I want to be fishing a ditch. Ditch that's just what we call a minor creek channel in Texas. Or maybe I'm out here on the Colorado River itself fishing, but I want to be near some sort of a channel. Now, look at this little spot right here. Look, you have points coming out on both sides of it, and this little minor creek channel that's well defined going right between those 2 points. This is a perfect wintertime spot, and it just absolutely textbook. Because I can fish the creek channel itself, or I could maybe target one of these points. When I get up here in this 30 feet of water and less, it's going to be solid brush. I might look at the very deep end of the brush on this point, but I'm really going to focus more out here on the parts of the point where there's little or no cover left, and look for those big females that are just roaming out there. If I was going to name one lure that was probably the #1 bait responsible for wintertime big bass on OH Ivie, it is the Alabama rig. This one here is a Young Flash Mob Jr., and I've got it rigged with some 3.3-inch Kitech swim baits on it. This is really a pretty easy bait to fish because you simply throw it out and reel it in. Now the key is you want to reel it about as slow as you can reel it, yet still make the blades spin and make the paddles on the swim baits kick. I want to fish it about 12 inches above the fish. I never want to let it get below the fish. And once a fish starts following it, just keep the cadence. Don't ever let the bait drop below the fish. Keep it a foot high, make him chase it up. You want to use big line for this. This is like 25-pound test fluorocarbon. And you need a big rod. This is a 7.5 foot long, like a swim bait rod. So you need a long rod because you're going to be making long casts with this bait. The Zoom Winged Fluke. It works a lot of times of the years everywhere, but here on OH Ivies too. But it really shines its best in the wintertime when fish are suspended over deep water around balls of bait. That's just the typical winter pattern here. Now, I'm fishing it on a 1/8 ounce range roller head made by Owner. I will sometimes go to a little bit heavier head if I need to get the bait deeper. But the key with this bait is you can get it to the level of the fish and fish it very slowly, very enticingly, like a wounded minnow around these bass. A lot of times these fish will follow it for a long way before they commit. So that's our overview of Ivie, and it's a gem right here in Central Texas. I hope you get to come enjoy it because any cast could be the bass of a lifetime.